You are listening to the Disney Dream Girls, an unofficial Disney theme parks podcast, and this is show number 207 for the 29th of April 2018.
Where dreams begin.
Hello and welcome to the Disney Dream Girls. My name is Michelle Young and I am one of your guides to the place where dreams begin. As usual, you can contact your Dream Girls via email info@disneydreamgirls.com, Twitter @DisDreamGirls, Instagram Disney_dream_girls, and you can also catch up with us over on that there Facebook just by searching for Disney Dream Girls. Well, usually I have my good friend Jane with me. However, this week I'm just bringing some audio I recorded earlier on in the year with the wonderful Erin Foster from the Unofficial Guides to the Disney Cruise Line. Now, I did mention this on our Facebook page earlier in the week, that this is the audio that I recorded that wasn't the usual quality I would normally strive for. Unfortunately, sometimes this happens. It's one of those technological quirks that we have to put up with. However, I felt that the Disney Cruise Line content was so outstanding I had to share it. Those thoughts were echoed by your good selves. So, coming up in a few moments, I will be sharing that chat with you. But first, let's hop over to the wonderful Kieran with Disney history and his time zoning back, starting with the 28th.
Hello, my lovelies. It's your boy, Kieran. But anyway, let's get into this. So probably cut out most of my ad-libs, so let's begin. On this day in Disney history, on the 28th of April 2006, Disney's California Food and Wine Weekends begin in Anaheim. Also on this date in 2006, Fall Out Boy performed at Walt Disney World on the first of a two-night gig for Grad Night. Following to the 29th of April 1939 and the premiere run of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs closes, having been in the USA cinemas since its premiere in December 1937. Over in Anaheim on this day in 1957, actress Shirley Temple was part of the dedication ceremony of the Sleeping Beauty Castle walkthrough. Moving now to somewhere closer to home for me, and the West End production of Beauty and the Beast opened in London's Domino Theatre. This production was why am I struggling at that word? I don't get some of the stuff I struggle at when I'm performing this. Are the most simple sentences. I just don't get it, you know? This production was a collaboration between Howard Ashman, Tim Rice, and Alan Menken. Back then, the best seats in the house would have set you back £32.50 or $45. Next, on the 30th of April 1969, over at the Ramada Inn on Highway 50 in Florida, Don B. Tatum, the then president of the Walt Disney Company, shared details of their 3 years of hard working of planning Walt Disney World. At this momentous event, the company had hired out the entire hotel, and in the grounds they had a circus tent that showcased models and artist renderings of the new destination vacation place, Walt Disney World. It was a 3-day event, onwards to the 1st of May 1942, and the first of many Donald Duck cartoons, later named the World War II shorts, was released. Also, those of you who are fans of the University of Oregon, here's one for you to celebrate. The rights that enable them to use Donald Duck as their team mascot and insignia of UOO was given to them by Walt Disney Productions on the 1st of May 1947. Well, this isn't entirely true, as after Walt's death in 1966, it appeared that there wasn't a formal contract, but the legal boffins soon sorted it out. See, that was me. That's the end. Yeah, bye.
On today's Disney Dream Girls, I have with me Erin Foster. Erin is one of the team that brings us the unofficial guide to the Disney Cruise Line, and today we are going to talk about Disney Cruises. Hello there, Erin, and welcome to the Disney Dream Girls.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. I was very excited when I got my copy of the cruise line book because everyone who's listening will know I'm going on my first Disney cruise this summer. Having read the guidebook, I now want to speak with yourself to find out as much as I physically can about this to prepare myself.
Very excited for your first trip?
I'm very excited. But before we do all the cruise line chat, let's just start with a little bit of introduction about yourself. If you could just tell us a little bit about how Disney has impacted on your life and how you came to being an author of this book.
Okay, well, I have 3 daughters who are now in their late teens, but they're all very close in age. And when they were small, I had friends that were like jetting off to Tuscany with their children. And I was like, I cannot handle that. I am going to go to Disney World where they have everything all in order for me. They have enough high chairs for all my kids and enough chicken nuggets for all my kids. And we had really, really wonderful times at Walt Disney World, and it very much worked for our family. And then as my friends and neighbors would go, often they would sort of call me, let me take you out to lunch and get your advice on how to plan a Disney trip. So I sort of became the neighborhood expert, and my husband would joke like, you should do this for a living. And lo and behold, a few months later, Disney started advertising to get people on their initial Walt Disney World Moms panel, which was formed at the end of 2007. And so I applied and miraculously got onto the Moms panel, and basically through that started writing about Disney officially, even more than I was, and going down even more. And through that, I met many people in the Disney blogging community, and I met Len Testa of the touringplans.com and Unofficial Guide series, and struck up a relationship with him. And I think I've been working with him for about 6 years now, and covering Disney cruises and the parks, and it's just been a really wonderful experience.
Absolutely fantastic. And I gather you've been to more than one Disney park yourself as well.
I've been to, my primary park is Walt Disney World, and I go 5 or 6 or 7 times a year there. But I've also been a few times to Disneyland in California, and once to Disneyland Paris, and once to Disneyland in Hong Kong.
Wow, fantastic. Any plans to go even further east to Shanghai or to Tokyo?
I would certainly love to. I'm actually waiting for Adventures by Disney to have a trip to Tokyo. That would be my dream trip. It does not yet exist, but every year I cross my fingers that that's gonna happen. But I'm sure that I will get there eventually. My sort of youngest daughter, Josie, will not let me go another 10 years without visiting all the parks. So she's gonna make sure it happens, and she has to steal my credit card and book it herself.
Fantastic. Okay, well, what a wealth of knowledge that we have with us then, with all of that experience that you've had. So when did you go on your first cruise, and what cruises have you been on? Okay,
I've been on, I think, about 15.
Oh, wow.
The first one was when 2003, I believe, on the Wonder, when there were only 2 ships in the fleet. And my twins at the time were about 3 years old. And I have to say, I didn't love it. Shh, don't tell anybody. I did not love my first. I was not prepared. I didn't do any research. There was no such thing as this unofficial guide to Disney Cruise Line. I just really didn't know what to expect. And I was sort of flummoxed by the whole thing. You'll hear a lot that people are often very excited about Disney Cruise Line because of the kids clubs and getting the kids activity centers, and the children become really immersed in that. And my daughter Josie, the one who now is completely obsessed with Disney, was in a sort of separation anxiety phase, and she would not let go of my leg. And so they didn't really enjoy the kids club at that point. And I had some seasickness issues and didn't know in advance to sort of speak with my doctor about things that we could do about that. And so I was just really, really underprepared. So it's great that you and anybody listening is doing their research in advance to understand that there are things to do with kids that are not the kids club, and to understand what their tolerances are for sea travel and all that sort of things. I think it was 2011 that I finally went back, when my husband said the girls are older, we want to start to show them more of the world. And he, unbeknownst to me, was looking at Disney Cruise Line trips, particularly the Mediterranean ones, and so this would be a really great way to start to show our girls Europe without the hassle of packing and unpacking and that sort of thing. And he's like, and I will take you to Disneyland Paris if you do this. So I was like, I have to go. So even though I was a little nervous, I did a lot more preparation. I spoke to my doctor about seasickness remedies. I did tons of research on what there was to do with the kids and that sort of thing. And we had an absolutely fabulous time on that trip, and I became hooked. I think it was just an aberration at the beginning that it didn't work out. But I've since been on Disney cruises, the Mediterranean, 2 different ones in Northern Europe, one that went towards like Estonia and Russia, and one that went towards Iceland and down to Scotland. I've been to Alaska. I've been on many Caribbean ones, almost all their itineraries, I think.
Wow. Let's link that then to the first thing is, when is the optimum time, in your opinion, to book? And what sort of considerations do you need to sort of have in mind when you're looking to book, like dates and rooms? Because there's a whole plethora of different kinds of room.
A lot depends on who you're traveling with. If you are traveling, just yourself or a couple, it might not matter as much if you want to go to fit your budget. So obviously the inside rooms are a lot less expensive typically than rooms with large verandas and suites and that sort of thing. All the rooms are good. One thing to understand, and again, this is part of the reason that I had a little trouble on my first trip, is I didn't understand that the rooms are small. You sort of have to put that in your thinking cap. Mm-hmm. If you've ever been to, say, one of the value rooms at Disney World, like the Pop Century or the All-Stars, like the large rooms on Disney Cruise are similar in size to those rooms, which would be like the smaller hotel rooms on land. So you have to sort of pace yourself that way. But once you understand that, the square footage of your room is small, but there's so many other places on the ship where you can hang out. Mm-hmm. So get in your mind that I'm not going to be spending all my time in my room necessarily. I'm going to go to the shows, and I'm going to go sit by the pool. I'm going to go to a movie. I'm going to go to a class or some other entertainment event, that sort of thing. The size of your room doesn't really matter. Think about what kind of a sleeper you are. I actually happen to love the inside rooms on the ships because they're incredibly dark. And I'm a terrible sleeper, and any sort of light, really any light, will wake me up. And I have never, ever, ever slept better than I have been in the inside cabins of the Disney cruise ships. It's dark, there's a gentle rocking, and I am out. And when I have like a bout of insomnia, I'm like, I want to book a cruise just so I can sleep. So that's wonderful. A lot of people really say, I have to have a veranda. A veranda is what you would call sort of a balcony on a land hotel. It's you open your door and there's like a little porch sort of area with a chair or two, and you can look out at the ocean. Many people say they cannot cruise without that. I personally think it's nice, but it's not necessarily an imperative, because you can always go sit up on deck and, with a cup of coffee or a adult beverage or your book or whatever and watch the ocean there. I don't sit outside all that much on the cruise, because I feel like if I'm ever reading, the wind is blowing my book pages there. Some people like to, eat out there, room service. I'm always either too hot or too cold. I don't know. Maybe it's just something about me, but I love having big windows. But sitting on my own veranda has never been a thing that's been that important to me. And it's an easy way to save money if you're looking to save money, to not get a veranda room. Instead of, you can get an ocean view room with just portholes.
Okay, that's sound advice. Is there a particular part of the ship that, if you suffer particularly with seasickness, that you perhaps would like to advise people to avoid?
Right. The sort of general rules of thumb are, if seasickness is an issue for you, you want to be lower in the ship. So, deck maybe 2 or 3 as opposed to deck 10. Which is generally thought to be more beneficial if you suffer from motion sickness issues. And people often think that towards the front of the ship, the forward portion is less rocky than the back. So low and towards the front is the general rule of thumb. I've had good and bad experiences in pretty much any part of the ship. And these ships are big and they have awesome stabilizers. So you're not going to feel a ton of motion. There are different itineraries that are better and worse for that sort of thing. So The Mediterranean is better. I mean, I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why my Mediterranean cruise was such a good one to sort of reintroduce myself, because the Mediterranean is generally quite calm.
Mm-hmm.
And the Alaska cruises, when you're going in the channels, and when I was in Norway, the ship is going slow and the waters are gentle. Look at those parts of your itinerary, and maybe also look at the time of year you're sailing. Like if you're sailing in the Caribbean during hurricane season, even if you're not in a hurricane, hopefully you won't be, and Disney sails around those things, the waters can be a little more choppy. And so if you are prone to seasickness, maybe avoid the Caribbean in the fall, that sort of thing.
Okay, and again, as you mentioned beforehand, top tip would be, as a preventative measure, take something with you for seasickness, even if you don't use it.
Absolutely. Take an honest look at yourself. Are you somebody who can't read in the back of a car? Or do you get ill on a plane or a train or that sort of thing? And also, if you're bringing children, look at how they behave in a moving vehicle of any sort. Do you get ill on a roller coaster, that sort of thing? And if you do find yourself getting a little woozy in any of those situations, probably the best thing to do is to speak to your medical provider. There are medications. Speak to your pharmacist or speak to your doctor and get some advice and bring those with you.
Absolutely top tips there. So I've got my cruise booked. I've chosen a particular itinerary. I've thought about the dates that suit me best. I've looked at the weather. I've thought about medical considerations. How do I best get to the port to actually get onto the ship? Because I'm getting so many conflicting different ideas from different people. It's like, well, what do I do? I'm a newbie. I don't know what my options are and which is going to be the best. How can you help me out, Erin?
Are you going out of Port Canaveral?
Yes.
So as a new person, and if you're just, one or two or three people, I personally think the Disney shuttle bus is the easiest thing. And it's for, one or two people, it's pretty economical. It's $35 each way. It's guaranteed to show up. It's a pleasant ride. It's a nice motor coach with a little restroom in the back if you need it. They play little, Disney cartoon clips that you can watch or not watch depending on your needs. It's extremely easy to do that, and you can get that from any of the Disney Resort hotels or the Orlando Airport.
And can I just ask, with that, does your luggage come on board the coach with you to the port?
It depends on where you're staying, but generally not.
Ooh.
So, for instance, I've done this many times. I stay at a Disney Resort hotel, and then I take the shuttle to the port. And so what they do is the night before you sail, they'll put a little note under your door or in your room that says, we'll be by to pick up your luggage at, usually it's 8 a.m., it could be 9 a.m. And then you will meet your driver in the lobby of the hotel at, say, noon. And so they'll come around and they'll pick up your suitcases and take them directly to the ship. So the next time you'll see them will be on board your ship at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you get on the bus a few hours later. You can have a leisurely breakfast or go for a swim or whatever. They'll meet up with you and put you on the shuttle and drive you to the port. You'll obviously want to keep anything of value or anything that you'll absolutely need for the first day in a carry-on, and you can certainly a carry-on or a small bag with you on the bus, and even like a overhead airline rolly bag size thing you could absolutely bring on the bus, and they'll store it underneath. But your main big luggage will get sent ahead.
Okay, thanks for that. So what about if I wanted to hire a car? Is that something, or a limousine service or anything like that? Is that fairly straightforward?
There are many car services in the Orlando area, and we recommend some of them in the book. It's certainly easy enough to do. And if you, for example, want to make sure that you stay with your large luggage in the same vehicle, that's a way to do that. If you're only one or two people, it could end up being more expensive to hire your own car. If you're with a group of, say, 4 or 5 or 6 people, it's probably going to be less expensive to hire the own car rather than to pay $35 a person on the Disney shuttle. So that's a little bit of your, the calculus that you're going to make. The other thing is, to help you make your decision, is if it really matters to you what time you arrive at the port. Mm-hmm. You can select a port arrival time. Some of that is based a little bit about your Castaway Club level. The Castaway Club is, depending on how many cruises you've sailed on, you have a little bit of priority on booking certain things like excursions or meals or choosing your port arrival time. But some people really want to arrive at the port and get on the ship as early as possible. So if you're taking the Disney shuttle bus, chances are you're not going to arrive at the port anytime before, say, 1 or 1:30, just because they typically pick you up at your Disney hotel around noon. And if you're taking your own transportation, you're hiring your own car or taxi or Uber or whatever, you can say, I want to leave, the Orlando area at 8 a.m. and then you'll arrive at the port at 9:30 and you can wait there. And if you have an early port time, you can get on the ship a few hours earlier. Some people want to be on the ship really early because they have certain spa experiences they want to book that are only available for booking on the ship, or they want to be the first one on the aqueduct, or they want to be first in the buffet line, or that sort of thing. But your room is really not going to be ready until 1 or 1:30, sometimes even a bit later. So you're going to be walking around with whatever your luggage you've tried to bring on, if you have a day's worth of clothing or medications or cameras or anything. So you're going to be stuck walking around with that for the entire time until your room is open. Also, some people want to get their baby to nap on the bus on the way down or not. So one of the big considerations about whether you take your own transportation or the Disney shuttle is your arrival time at the port, if that matters to you, and also the price.
Okay. I think I've got it set in my mind that I'll probably, because there's 2 or 4 of us possibly going, that we will probably hire a car and just get there and then we know we're there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're there. We're on the cruise ship. What can I do now?
What can you do? Well, the first thing you're probably going to do is eat. And the second and third and fourth and fifth things you're going to do is probably eat.
Sounds perfect.
The first thing you're going to do when you're on the ship is check in with one of the cast members on the ship and make sure you're not missing anything. So things you might be missing are, on your particular cruise, are there character greetings or character meals that you can only access with a pre-timed ticket. Those things will not cost you anything, but on some cruises there's like a special greeting with Anna and Elsa or some of the Marvel characters or that sort of thing that you might be able to book in person and you wouldn't have access to that later in the cruise. So you want to ask if that's something that you need. If you haven't been able to get reservations for Paolo or Remy, the adult dining areas, or for the nursery, you want to check in person and see if maybe those are available. Same thing with some of the mixology drink making classes. If you haven't been able to get that online in advance, check and see if that's available. And some of the spa treatments, some of the massages, that sort of thing, you can only book in person. So if there are things like that you haven't booked, that's what you want to get on first thing. Like maybe you can split up your party. If someone wants to register for mixology and someone wants to check if there's something available, the rainforest room at the spa, get that handled right away. And that is a reason why a new person might want to arrive early to get all those ducks in a row.
Okay.
After that, you're going to get some lunch. There's the Cabanas buffet, which is up near the top of the ship, has really pretty much all the food you could ever want to eat all the time. That's there, but there will also be one of the regular restaurants that have sort of a more sit down, you have a reserved table. There might be some buffet component of it, but it's not all buffet food. So if you want to be more relaxed or you want the white tablecloths, there's always that option as well. Your room will generally be ready in the 1 to 1:30 range. Then you can go and settle in and your luggage will be delivered at some point. You can unpack. One of the main things to know that you have to do, really the only thing that you have to do the entire cruise, is on the first day, typically about 4 or 4:30, they'll have the muster drill where it's a sort of safety talk about how to exit the ship should you ever need to in an emergency. And that is absolutely mandatory. And they will make sure that everybody in your stateroom is there, and they will hold everybody until they find all persons on the ship to get the instructions. And that's, like I said, it's usually about 4 o'clock on the first day. And that's the only thing you absolutely have to do. After that, pretty much Every choice is yours. You can go to the sail away party. You can go eat some more. You can take a nap. You can go to a movie. Really, there's just an almost infinite number of things to do.
Sounds absolutely perfect. And I do remember the mandatory safety drill that we had when I went on the Royal Caribbean cruise, that we were waiting for quite a while because there was a group of people who were late, and we heard all the tannoys for them, and we all had to wait until they turned up, and everybody looked at them in a very stern manner for holding them up. But totally understand with safety, that's paramount. Okay, so I gather we're going to be on the fantasy, and there's like dining rotations, and we mentioned earlier, or you did, about special dining, and a lot of people have been saying, oh, are you going to do Paolo or Remy? And I know from what I've looked at in the book, I've got to try and do that as early as I physically can, but being a new first-time cruiser, I'm not going to be able to book as early as someone who's had, say, 5, 10, 15 cruises. So is it likely I'll be able to get those reservations?
Is it likely? It depends on how booked your cruise is. Some cruises on the off season, and there are not that many repeat cruisers. Frank, if you were going, say, Christmas week, it might be sort of challenging. But if, you're going in the off season, it's quite likely it would be easy for you to get those. Remy is sometimes harder than Paolo because it's smaller and there are fewer times available. It's generally not that hard to get Paolo. And certainly if you don't get it, it's worth stopping by the restaurant in person, on your first day of your cruise, and even several times during your cruise, because they cancel all the time. They decide they've gotten too much sun and they'd rather get room service, or, something else happens. Mm-hmm. I've been on at least 2 cruises where I did not have a Paolo reservation in advance, and I was able to dine there more than once just by walking up and asking.
Oh, fantastic. What's your preference, a brunch or a dinner, Remy or Paolo? Which would you prefer?
Well, Remy is truly extraordinary. It's an amazing place. If you've ever dined at, say, Victoria and Albert's at Walt Disney World, it's really a top-notch. It would go in sort of the top 10 of any state's restaurants if it were on land. And it's more expensive too. I think it's currently a $90 upcharge per person, plus alcohol and whatever. And it's a meal that's going to last you 3 or 4 hours, and it's really something extraordinary. Paolo is delicious, but it's more of a really nice meal rather than sort of a once in a lifetime kind of meal. So again, it depends on how much time you want to spend. Like Remy will probably take up your whole evening, whereas Paolo, you could eat and then go do some other things on the ship, that sort of thing.
If I book it, what if, and this is me being a newbie panicking, I book one of the dinners and it then happens to fall on the same night as Animator's Palette, and I don't want to miss that one. Is there anything I can do?
Well, what you should do is in advance, call and find out what your rotation is, or you can ask them specifically for a certain rotation. So you can say, I'd like to do Animator's Palette on days 1 and 4, and they will most of the time accommodate you on that. And so you could, if you get a Paolo reservation, you could call them and say, I don't want to be at Animator's Palette the night I'm at Paolo. And they'll usually try to work with you on that. It's not guaranteed, but I'd say, 90% of the time they'll be able to work that out.
Oh, that's one panic over with. Thank you for that, because it was like, no, because the friend I'm going with wants to be able to eat at Animator's Palette twice because he's absolutely obsessed with eating in that restaurant. He's just driving me potty about, we've got to eat there twice, Michelle. It's
fun. It's a really fun environment. But yeah, you can call them and they'll try to, say, that's the one I prefer to go to twice. And there's, on a 7-night cruise, there's one you're going to go on 3 times. You could make it so that Animator's Palette was your 3-time one if you wanted. Yeah, it's certainly worth a call for them. How about that?
Thank you for that. That's definitely helped me. I think, as you say, Remy has just got to be done, because I don't know if I'll get on another cruise line after this. It might be my one and only Disney cruise, so I think I've got to go for it and just go and book Remy and hang the expense and just go and love it and enjoy every minute of it and take lots of pictures and savour everything.
Absolutely. It's it's that could be your last meal. It's a really fabulous, wonderful experience.
Absolutely. So I'm now full to the tummy, but I decide I get back to my room and an hour later I'm peckish. Tell me about room service, because I gather this is a bit different to some of the other cruise lines out there.
The vast majority of the room service menu is included in the price of your cruise, so there's no upcharges for most things. There's a couple of little snacky items like packaged candy and alcoholic beverages, which is going to be an upcharge anywhere. Those things are not included. They cost $3 or $5 or whatever it is. But most, you can get a steak sandwich, you can get a steak, you can get a fruit plate, you can get any of those things. Those are all included in the price of your cruise on room service. So if you decide to sleep in one morning and you don't want to get up and go to Cabanas for breakfast, they'll bring you some pancakes in your room, and there's no extra charge for that. If you get back late from an excursion and you miss your rotational dining time, they'll bring you a real meal in your cabin for room service, and that's included. You do probably want to tip your porter that brings it to you, but otherwise there's no additional charge. It's just part of your cruise.
And what sort of amount would you recommend? You see, I'm from the UK and we are not, we do not tip that often in England. When we obviously travel, we try and follow the customs. So what would you recommend?
Maybe $1 or $2 an item. So let's say you get, a sandwich and a drink. You're probably okay with a $2 or $3 tip. It's pretty minimal. But it's
okay.
$100 per item, or $1 or $2 per person if you're just getting little things. One of my big tips about room service is they have cookies and milk, and they usually have like warm chocolate chip cookies or warm oatmeal raisins. And you can just call them and say, you know what, it's 11 o'clock at night. I want a cookie. Bring me a cookie. And they'll bring you this lovely plate of like cookies and milk. Or they'll bring you those Mickey bars, like the Mickey ice cream bars. You just call and they show up in your room, and you just give them like $1 for a tip, and it's perfect.
Wow. I know a friend of mine through the podcast, Paul Towanicki, he was saying he did this, and every time he gave the porter $5, and he was astounded how quick his room service actually got to him. Yeah. Because he was giving a really good tip.
Speaking of tipping, one of the things that my husband likes to do is tip our stateroom attendants some in advance. So he will, the first day your stateroom attendant, who is normally incredibly lovely and helpful, will come by and introduce him or herself and see if there's anything you need, any special pillows or any, if there's anything for your room. And my husband will typically tip the stateroom host $20 at that point. And we always get like the best towel animals, and daughters all have very long, thick hair and go through a lot of conditioner. And so he'll say, can you just make sure we have enough conditioner? And there's like one time, I think he literally brought like 20 of the containers of conditioner. We're like, okay, we didn't really need that much, but thank you. But my husband likes to pre-tip on the cruises a little. We usually have very good service, but we've had extraordinary service when he does that.
What about a friend of mine, Angie? This is a bit different, but when she went to Disneyland Paris, she took little sort of like cellophane packs of English candy to give to cast members that provided some magic as a little thank you. Would you recommend that as something that you could perhaps do, or is it frowned upon?
It's not frowned upon, and there are people that do it. One thing to keep in mind is that the cast on the ship have very, very small living quarters. I mean, if you think that your stateroom is small, there are sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 people in a stateroom half that size for the crew quarters. So they often don't have room for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that people, if they want to give something personal, but cash is always what they want, but if you want to give something else, calling cards are always welcome, I believe, because most of the crew is from somewhere far away and they need to keep in touch with their families. Magazines are always welcome, usually, like a People or an Us Weekly or, even like a Time magazine or The Economist, something to keep them up to date on what's going on in the world, because they don't have a lot of outside contact. Candy is something that they say some of the cast members want, but they might have different dietary needs that you don't know about. Nothing physically large, because they don't have a lot of space to store it. So yeah, generally money is the most welcome thing, and then calling cards is the second most welcome thing. But other personal things, make sure they're either small or consumable.
Okay, top tips. So we've gone through our food options. What about entertainment? What can I expect?
All of the Disney ships have several Broadway style shows, West End style shows that are part of the normal itinerary. And so some of them are unique to the cruises in that they sort of tell their own story, usually weaving in many songs from Disney films. And then some of them are retellings of Disney films. Like there's a Tangled show, there's a Frozen show, there's an Aladdin show, which is sort of a condensed version of the movie, but on stage. So there are Disney themed shows. There are also on every ship guest entertainers. So it could be a musician or a magician or a juggler or a ventriloquist. My husband's favorite is we were on one sailing of the Wonder and there was a hypnotist, and my husband went up and got, quote unquote, hypnotized on the ship. And he just thought that was like the funniest thing that ever happened to him in his life. So there's always those shows on the main stage. There are films pretty much around the clock, both in the theaters and up on deck by the pool. And there are also pretty much around the clock. There are character greetings. There are lessons, there's drink making lessons and food making lessons and napkin and towel folding lessons. There are trivia contests. There are things like dance lessons on some cruises. When we went to Alaska, there was a naturalist who talked about the environment of the area. A lot depends on the actual itinerary that you're going on. You're never at a loss for something to do.
I'm really excited about the Midship Detective Agency. I am so excited to see that.
Yeah, it's fun. You sort of get a mission at the beginning, and then it takes you to different parts of the ship, and things that you do will cause artwork on the ship to move or that sort of thing. If you've ever played the Kim Possible game in Epcot, it's a little similar to that. It's fun.
So, some more general questions. As I mentioned off air, I'm a single traveller who happen to know some people who are going to be on the same cruise.
Okay.
Is it a place where I will feel comfortable, or will I be out of place as the only single person on the ship? And I know it's a generalisation, so I'm sorry for that.
You won't be the only single person on the ship. Absolutely you won't. And you're going with friends, it sounds like, right? So I don't think you'll feel alone at all, really. But I'm somebody who travels on my own quite a lot. I travel to Disney World on my own several times a year. And let's say you were not going with friends. Let's say you were just going all on your own. Put you at a dining table with other singles if you want. So you can call Disney Cruise Line, or if you've made your reservation through a travel agent, you can make some requests related to your dining. In addition to, do you want to dine early or late? What order do you want to do the restaurants in? Like I mentioned before, like, do you want to do animated palette first, fourth, and that sort of thing. You can also make requests about how you want to have your companions. So my family often wants to be just us because, we're crazy all the time and we don't get a lot of sort of quality time together. And so we want to just have ourselves at the table. But there was one time I was traveling with a girlfriend and we wanted to meet people. And so we said, don't seat us on our own. And they sat us at a table with 2 or 3 other women that were traveling together and a single woman that was traveling on her own. And we had lovely dinner table conversations. So that's really common. I once traveled with just one of my daughters, and they put us at a table with 2 other moms with teenage kids. And so we had lots to talk about. So if that's something you're interested in, you can let them know, and they'll certainly make it so it's not at all awkward to be dining on your own, even if you're traveling completely solo, that they'll put you with other people. Or if you're a total introvert and don't want to talk to anybody, you can ask to be put on your own, and they'll 90% of the time honor that. Or you can dine at Palo on your own, or Remy on your own, or Cabanas on your own. All of the activities on board are open to single people just as much, if not more, than groups. So if you want to get into Palo or Remy as a single, that's pretty easy for them to slot you in. So if you go up and say, I want to eat at Remy on my own, they'll often work with you to get you in. And it's very easy if you're just one or two people.
Okay, that's awesome to know. I think we're asking to sit as a group of 4, and we've asked for the early dining rotation, so fingers crossed that all comes to be. Thinking about times where you're in port, I gather Disney I've seen the list of excursions and for every single budget under the sun. Have you done any that you'd particularly recommend for the Caribbean?
One thing, almost all the Caribbean ones go to Castaway Cay. Mm-hmm. And the first time you go to Castaway Cay, and I wouldn't schedule too much in advance because it's nice to just sort of walk around the island and get it all sorted out and find out what you enjoy. There's always bikes and rafts available to rent. You don't need to do that in advance. They're always there and they're not going to run out. I don't think you necessarily need to reserve a lot in advance at Castaway Cay. I also, in Nassau, if you're stopping there, I don't love doing a lot of excursions there either. Like maybe go out and walk around the straw market for a few minutes. I think some of the ones at Atlantis are a little bit overpriced. I don't know. I think in the Caribbean, I personally tend to just sort of wing it on my own. The ones that I've been on, I have felt are a little bit overpriced generally in the Caribbean. But if there's something you really want to do, like swim with the dolphins, or there's one Nassau one, I believe it's a swim with sea lions, that sort of thing. Go ahead and do it. Absolutely do it. But I don't think it's 100% necessary.
Mm-hmm. And I do know in the guidebook that you do go into a lot more detail about the port. So I do highly recommend, if you are doing a Disney cruise or if you just want to do some research, get the guidebook, read it, because the information is just stacked in there with everything that you could possibly want to know about a cruise, because obviously today we're just sort of skimming the surface of a very, very deep pool, aren't we?
Yeah, one thing I will say though, if you really are traveling on your own, sometimes it does make more sense to book an excursion with Disney, because then you know that you're in a group, and it's always a safety in numbers, and general things are very safe. But let's say you want to go explore some historical site on an island. It's quite easy to do if you book your excursion through Disney. Whereas if you're on your own, it might be a little more intimidating, or there might be a language issue or something like that if you try to wing it on your own. That's something to consider if you're a solo traveler.
Fantastic. Okay, my last big question for you is, can you hit me with the 5 top tips every newbie cruiser needs to know? Yikes.
Okay. We talked a little bit about motion sickness before, but one thing is to be prepared with medical stuff. So make sure that you have all your prescriptions up to date and you have everything labeled properly, that sort of thing. Most of the sort of general over-the-counter medications are available on the ship, but the ship's shop is only open certain hours. Mm-hmm. So if you want just an antacid or something, probably just bring a small supply on your own. And also, you should know that it's Imodium in the U.S., and not to get too graphic, but it's an anti-diarrheal medicine, that they don't sell that on the ship at all, because they want to know if you're having any gastric distress, which totally makes sense. But if it's something that you know that you always, when you travel, have a little bit of an upset stomach the first day, and that, this one dose will clean it right up, bring it yourself, because that won't be available on the ship. And if you ask for it at the ship medical center, they're going to like to quarantine you for 24 hours, which, if you're truly having distress, obviously get medical attention. But if it's something that you often experience and you know what it is, letting them know will put a hamper on your vacation. That's one thing to know, is to sort of be prepared with like the basic medical things that are important to you. Mm-hmm. We talked about dining time, but it really helps to think about whether you want early or late dinner. It matters a lot if you have kids. It matters depending on what excursions you've chosen. So some people will like to plan, say, 7 or 8 hour long excursions, and then they get back and they want to shower and relax before dinner. And I know several people who plan these big long excursions and then have the early dinner at like 5:30, and they come to dinner all sweaty and rushed because they didn't have a chance to unwind, that sort of thing. So think about, what makes sense for your style as far as dining goes. Choosing the right length of your first trip is pretty important. I tend to send people away from the 3 nights on the Dream for their first trip. I think it's too rushed. You're too unpacking. That the first one that I went on was a short one, and even though it was a little challenging for me, I think if I had more time to settle in and understand what was available on the ship, it would have been easier for me. One of the big tips is not to spend money that you don't need to. Like we were talking about booking excursions. Don't feel like, particularly on your first trip, that you have to book these incredibly expensive excursions. There's so much to do on the ship. Take advantage of the money you've already spent on the ship. You don't have to go and do the $3,000 catamaran thing when you came in on board. Really, understand that some things cost extra. Alcohol costs extra. Some of the mixology classes cost extra. You don't absolutely need to do that. One thing that my daughter Josie loves to do is bingo. And there's no gambling on the Disney ships other than bingo, but man, she loves it. We have looked at our bill at the end going like, oh my God, did we really spend like $600 on bingo? If you're traveling with children, sort of, make sure everybody understands what the budget is for the family and sort of stick to it. Because that was one really eye-opening trip. It was like, oh, we didn't really need to do that, did we? But my overarching thing is just to sort of like relax and have fun. And I say this with every person that I talk to who's planning a Disney World vacation or a Disney cruise vacation is it's your trip. You don't have to do what everybody says everybody does. So the story I always tell is I have a neighbor who was taking her daughters to Disney World for the first time. And she had lunch with me and I spent like 2 hours telling her all the things to do with all the parks. And, I had like this whole, it was like planning an invasion for her. And she comes back and I'm like, oh my gosh, did you do this? Did you do that? And she's like, no, we just went to the Magic Kingdom and hung out for 5 days. I was sort of like initially horrified and just like, my kids were really happy. We were just really happy. I was like, okay, well, good for you. So it's the same thing on the ship. It's everybody says you have to do this mixology class, or everybody says you have to see this show, or everybody says you have to do this excursion. It's like, no, you don't have to do it. You have to do what makes sense to you. And if that's sleeping late and going to the movie and reading your book on deck and getting a tan, and that's what makes you happy, then absolutely do that. So, understand that it's a vacation and you should feel rested at the end of it and happy at the end of it. So
awesome advice. Perfect. Anything else you want to add before we close off?
What to know is that some people are really shocked about the pools when they get there. The pools are relatively small, so just be aware that you're not going to be swimming laps. Particularly though, it sounds like you're with a group of adults. The adult pool areas are wonderful. That's one thing to talk about is that if you're not traveling with kids, there's still plenty to do on the Disney ships. There are adult areas for dining. There's adult areas for swimming, for relaxation. There are adults only areas of the ship to like sit and relax and read. There's coffee bars and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's another thing is that people think that Disney Cruise must be for kids. It's absolutely not just for kids. I've been with groups of adults several times, and I frankly have had a better time than when I was with my children, because I was able to explore areas of the ship and Serenity Bay, Castaway Key, which is the adults only area there, beautiful and quiet, and just able to again relax at a whole nother level that we weren't when we were traveling with our children.
That's a top tip. I am sure we'll be kept incredibly busy on this cruise. You're getting me so excited for it, and I've still got many months to wait. So, would you like to give yourself a big shout out on where people can find you on social media, where they can get the book from? Obviously, I'll put some links on the show notes as well.
Well, the book is The Unofficial Guide to Disney Cruise Line. I wrote it with Len Testa and Laurel Stewart and Richie Hoffman. And you can get it in the U.S., and I'm sure in the U.K. you can get it on Amazon.com and many large bookstores. Probably like your local tiny bookshop won't have it, but larger bookshops will. And I write on touringplans.com, and we also have a pretty big cruise section on there. One thing on touringplans.com that's nice is that we have a fare tracker, so we can go on there and look and see when is the best time to book your Disney cruise from a financial perspective, because the prices do fluctuate a little bit depending on demand and availability and that sort of thing. You can follow me on Twitter at momspanelerin. And yeah, look for me on touringplans.com.
Absolutely will do. Thank you ever so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for coming on the podcast and sharing all that wonderful advice. And I'm sure if people have any questions, they'll track you down and ask you directly.
Absolutely, sounds great.
Where dreams begin.
Well, that's me wrapping up this show. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly have got a very long list of top tips that I need to make sure that I keep stored in my head before I go on my trip. If you've got any more you'd like to share with us, why not drop us a line via email, info@disneydreamgirls.com. You can tweet us at DisDreamGirls or get in touch via our Facebook page, Disney Dream Girls. But until next week, it's goodbye from me.